Hello ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome back to Kenny's crack house of collectible materials. Okay, today, books. Now it's possible that a lot of you might not be too familiar with some of the stuff I'm going to mention today, because reading not as popular as it used to be. I know Kindle and what have you, and ebooks and everything have become the thing, but actually reading physical books is almost becoming a thing of the past, except for people like me who collect the things. So it's a part of my collection that I haven't actually gone into yet. I haven't done a big video on my book collection, which just to give you a little bit of history before we start. Prior to 1983, which was 35 years ago, all I did was read. From the age of about 10, I started reading proper books. And prior to that, I was into Beano, Dandy, Rupert Bear, and all the stuff that little kids get into. But I was quite an early reader, and I read a lot. Being an only child, I read a lot. And by the time I was 10, 11, I was getting interested in ordinary books, and I came across the works of people like H.G. Wells and John Wyndham. John Wyndham you might not be familiar with, but H.G. Wells is quite famous. And The War of the Worlds, Time Machine, all of these books that were considered science fiction, and I became very, very interested in science fiction. It became a passion of mine. By the time I was 12, I was reading avidly. It wasn't until I was about maybe 13, 14 that all you could get prior to that were the Wells books and Jules Verne and stuff like that. And then round about the early 60s, there was an explosion of mass market science fiction paperbacks. Ray Bradbury, stuff like that was getting printed over here. And then, a lot of the American science fiction authors became attainable. I used to have to go miles to get my H.G. Wells books and John Wyndham books, which were Penguin books, and I had to go a long way to get them. As I say, by the time I was 13, 14, I was reading for England, and that continued, as I say, until I was 35. I built up a large collection of books, both hardback and paperback, mainly science fiction. Although I did read other genres, I didn't just read science fiction, because that would be silly just to stick to the same genre. And even now, I've got quite a sizable collection of paperbacks and hardbacks upstairs, and I'll get round to doing a full video on it eventually. But as I say, today I'm just going to do my top 10 of novels, and couple of other books that I've got, which might be of interest to you. You might learn something, because, as I say, it's not a subject that's particularly popular these days. But so the idea of this channel is to promote all the stuff that I collect, and this just happens to be one area that, albeit I stopped collecting largely 35 years ago, although I still buy the odd book when I see them. So anyway, that's the history lesson. So let's jump into it. Right, first book I want to show you is this one, Junkie by William S. Burroughs. Now, Burroughs is a very, very famous author in America. A lot of you probably heard of him, even in this country. And I'd seen a documentary about him on TV. We're going back 40 years. And I happened to be wandering in a fish quay market one day, and I saw this book by him, and I thought, oh, that looks interesting, I'll buy it. This is probably the most, I don't know how to say it. It's probably the most shocking book I've ever read, in as much as it goes into detail about the day-to-day life of a drug addict. It's shocking because it's a world that, you know, I've never known, certainly never inhabited. I've never known anybody that's done drugs, but this is a blow-by-blow account of the day-to-day routine of a junkie. You know, the highs and the lows. It's a remarkable read. In as much as it's almost an alien culture, if you like. It's almost science fiction because it's a culture that's completely alien to me and probably many people who read the book. I honestly believe that they should put books like this on the syllabus at schools. You know, the older pupils. You know, maybe for A levels or whatever, because I guarantee you, if you read that book, you'd never go near drugs, ever. So it would serve a dual purpose. A, it's a good book, and B, it would completely put you off drugs. So there's number 10 on the list. Okay. Shattered Day by Harlan Ellison. I've got the hardcover of this as well, but this was easy to handle, so we'll just deal with the paperback. Any of you who follow my channel religiously will remember that I did a tribute to Harlan Ellison, who unfortunately died just recently. I showed all of the stuff that I had of his, and it was just a general tribute to the man and the writer. Now, but I've chosen this on my list because, excuse me, it has two of my very favourite stories in the one volume. I'll just have a look at the list. Yeah, it's got it's got three of my favourite stories. Jeff D is 5, which is a very famous story of his, which won all the awards. Is one of the stories in there, and the Shattered Day itself. You know, it's the story. You know, the titular story of the book. It's also a good story, but it's got one of the stories in it there that all the Harlan Ellison fans seem to ignore when talking about his stories, and I think it's one of his best stories. It's alive and well on a friendless voyage. It's basically about it's a science fiction story about this chap who's on a voyage to eternity, really. And during this voyage, he gets up and he walks around all the tables in the bar on this ship, and he confesses everything bad that he's done in his life. And at the end, when everybody gets off, just before it reaches eternity, he asks, having confessed, he asks that the bar, would anybody like to switch places with me? Because I'm going to the end of the line, and nobody takes him up on it. But it's a great story. Everybody will tell you that the best Harlan Ellison story is probably Repent Harlequin Said the TikTok Man. A very famous story of his, but actually that's probably my favourite story of his. Right, now, some of you might be familiar with this one. They did a TV series of this a few years ago, Gorman Gas. This is the second of a trilogy. First book was Titus Kronos, who's the main character, and then the third book is Titus Alone. This is the middle volume. I found over the years, from reading at an early age, that the more you read, the more appreciation you get for the English language. And this particular book, it's a Gothic fantasy. It's set in this big Roman dank castle, and there's all sorts of weird characters in it. I mean, it's a character piece, really. It's it's all about the characters, but it's so beautifully written that it almost transcends prose. It's almost like poetry. If I may, I'd just like to read you the first paragraph, and you'll maybe get an idea what I mean. Titus is 7. His confines Gormenghast, suckled on shadows, weaned as it were on webs of ritual. For his ears echoes, for his eyes a labyrinth of stone, and yet within his body something other than this umbrageous legacy. For first and ever foremost he is child. A ritual more compelling than ever man devised is fighting anchored darkness. A ritual of the blood, of the jumping blood. These quicks of sentience owe nothing to his forebears, but to those feckless hosts a trillion deep of the globe's childhood. The gift of the bright blood, of blood that laughs when the senses murmur, tenets mutter, weep, of blood that mourns when the seer laws croak, rejoice. O little revolution in great shades. I mean, that sort of stuff, even if you were a writer, to come up with something as poetic as that in prose is quite remarkable. And the whole book's not like that, but it just gives you an idea of the kind of book that it is, and that's why I like it so much. Okay, now where are we? Well, we turn 9/8, 7th. Right, so I think a lot of you might be familiar with this one, June by Frank Herbert. There has a film been made of it quite a few years ago now. Not a great film, but yeah, basically this is a science fiction book. It's about a young man called Paul Atreides, and it's set on a completely sand-covered planet called Arrakis. And once again, like Gormenghast, it has a wealth of great characters, but basically it's about June. The Arrakis, is called June for obvious reasons, as I've said, and it's great thing about it is there are sandworms on the planet. They're very dangerous. They suddenly come out the sand. If you're anywhere near them, you're dead. And they produce a spice, which is the main economy of the planet. And the book mainly concerns Paul's rise through the ranks until he becomes almost a Jesus-like figure. As I say, it's the first of many, many Dune books. There was an original trilogy, and then when Frank Herbert, the writer, died, his family, or his sons, whatever relatives, carried on writing them, and there's a load of them. I mean, I've got a few of them, but I've got nowhere near all of them. But that is just a great read. I remember, I think I was about 15 or 16 when I read that, and it's a bit dense, but I'd read so much that I was able to cope with it, and it is a wonderful book. One that if you're at all interested in science fiction, it's certainly one that I would pick up and read. Okay, now we're down to number 6 now. Now, I've already mentioned in one of my Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. I've already mentioned in one of my other top 10s that I did that this is my favourite film of all time. It's also one of my favourite books because unusually I read the book before I saw the film. But I didn't make the film any worse because the book was great and the film was great. So, yeah, it's It's not my normal kind of read, this one kind of genre. It's I'm not a big fan of period drama, but this is basically about Stevens, played by Anthony Hopkins in the film, a butler who's very straight-laced, and it's about his relationship with Miss Kenton here, who's the housekeeper, and also his relationship with his with the master of the house, who becomes involved with appeasement of the Nazis before the Second World War. So there's kind of a double strand goes through the book. But I suppose the main thread is his repressed love for her. That's what it amounts to. And the ending is, as I say, the end of the film always has me in tears. Honestly, the book, maybe not so much, but yeah. So I mean, that's one of my favourite books, and will remain so. I've no doubt. Okay, now we come down to. Oh, right. Before we deal with the top three, I'm just going to branch off slightly here. Now, when it comes to talking about novels, people often forget the graphic novel. I don't make any differentials between them because, to me, a graphic novel is the same as a written novel. You know, it's a story, except that it's told in pictures and prose, of course. Now, this one, Arkham Asylum, is probably one of my favourite, certainly my second favourite. I'm going to show you my first favourite next. But it's my second favourite graphic novel of all time. It's written by one of my favourite authors, Grant Morrison, and drawn by one of my favourite illustrators, Dave McKean. It's basically, without going into hordes of detail, it's a Batman Joker story, but except it's based in the Joker's domain, not in Batman's world, in Joker's world, with all the mad people. And it's just a tale of both trying to outwit each other, basically. It's more than that, but, that's what it is at its heart. And as I say, being set in Arkham Asylum, you've got all the other crazy characters, Killer Croc and Riddler and all of those people that are normally incarcerated there. It's also a story about the original, forget his Christian name now, but Arkham, who built the place. So there's a few strands go through it, but it's a wonderful graphic novel. I'm actually trying to get the anniversary edition because there's some additions to it. This is the original first edition that DC did. There's been a lot of reprints of it, but that's the original first edition. And it's quite scarce and expensive now. That's a tricky one to say. Right, now, definitely my favourite comic book, and this has been turned into a set of 3 graphic novels, so it can be included. I read the original comics in black and white, actually, in an old English magazine called Warrior, and then the Americans took it over and it became colour, and I've read all those, and then I've got it now in graphic novel form, Miracle Man by Alan Moore, he's my favourite comic author. No, I mean, I've got a lot, but he's my favourite. It's Miracle Man. It's an update of the old, it's a modern retelling of the old Marvel Man character from the 50s, which none of you will remember except me. And it's a story of where are we? I've actually forgotten the bloke's name. Can't believe it. Yeah, God. Mickey Moran. So much floating around my head. Mickey Moran, who turns into Miracle Man when he says atomic backwards, a Kimuda. And it's just, I don't know, it's just a tour de force of comic book stuff, but it's all blended so well into a sort of a convoluted story that it sort of like transcends normal comic books. It's just a brilliant story. That's the first volume, Dream of Flying. That's the second volume, The Red King Syndrome, and then that's the third volume, which is Olympus, when Marvel Man becomes omnipotent. But it's just, if you ever get the chance to pick those graphic novels up, or even the original comics, I would. And you love comics and you haven't read it, I would recommend that you do so. Right, if you'll excuse me 1 minute, I'm running out of gas here. Right, that's better. I can talk. Right, now we come to my top three. Number 3. Something Wicked This Way Comes, Ray Bradbury. This is a fantasy story. It's ostensibly a story about a young boy's coming of age. It's also about a carnival with a lot of strange people in it. And it's also a story about, mainly it's a story about a boy's relationship with his father. Ray Bradbury is another one of these lyrical, like Peake, who did Gorman Ghost that I read to you earlier. He's another one of these lyrical writers to me whose language just sort of like transcends normal prose. The first, chapter 1, there's a prologue about the two boys in the story, Jim Nightshade and Will Halloway. But I'll just read it briefly. The first couple of sentences of chapter 1. The seller of lightning rods arrived just ahead of the storm. He came along the street of Greentown, Illinois, in the late cloudy October day, sneaking glances over his shoulder. Somewhere not so far back, vast lightning stomped the earth. Somewhere a storm, like a great beast with terrible teeth, could not be denied. That sets the tone of that book. It's a lovely read. I reread it not so many weeks ago. It's a book I just love. It's a book I can read sort of any time, really. Right, then we come to number 2. Right, this author probably not so familiar, even if you're into science fiction or you know your authors. Clifford Simak. I didn't really become aware of him early on. It was only after I'd read quite a lot of science fiction that I came across him. And this book in particular, I've got rid of quite a few of my science fiction collection, and then tried to rebuy some of the ones that I wish I hadn't got rid of, and this was one. And it took me a while to find this on eBay. This was the original copy that I had, or the original edition, same one. It's about it covers a big time span, but it basically covers the period of man leaving Earth altogether to colonise Jupiter. Now you think Jupiter, it's not possible to colonise Jupiter because it's like a gas planet, but he gets around it with some science fiction jiggery pokery in there. And it's about when the dogs and the robots take over the planet, and it's just a wonderful book. It's a bit plodding in its prose when you compare it to Bradbury or Mervyn Peake there that we read about earlier, but it is a superb book, and again another one if you're into science fiction that I would heartily recommend. That's number 2, which leaves us with, drum roll, number 1. Okay, now who doesn't know this book? 1984 by George Orwell. Now, strangely enough, this is, people who don't read books, you know, if they're asked, what's your favourite book? They think, oh, God. They always come up with 1984 because it's so famous, so well thought of. But this actually is my favourite book, and I've read thousands of books, which is rather strange. But yeah, I mean, I expect a few of you have read this. If you haven't, it's basically the story of Winston Smith. It's the story of a totalitarian society where people have no freedom, where people are expected to toe the line. They're expected to be a member of the party. If the government says something didn't happen, all the newspapers are changed to reflect that, and Winston actually works in the ministry that's involved with this. And it's about Winston's transgression. He's found with his girlfriend in a room with an artifact from the old world that he shouldn't have had, that was illegal to possess, and it's about his about reintroducing him back into the party, and the room 101, which you've heard of. You know, he's subjected to his greatest fears, which is rats, and in the end, well, I won't. If you haven't read it, I won't tell you too much about the end. But yeah, I mean, it's just a classic of literature. It was. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't say it was science fiction as such. It's speculative fiction because it was written in 1948, and it dealt with 1984. So you have to call it speculative fiction. Science fiction may be stretching it a bit, but it doesn't really matter, whatever genre you want to pigeonhole it to. It's just a superb book, and it's resonant even now. You know, a lot of the things that are dealt with in this book, you can see mirrored in current society, and it's just the way things are going, have gone. It's amazing how you can kind of see all the things that George Orwell. I mean, I suppose you could, apart from speculative fiction, you could also call it a satire, but not like Animal Farm, you know, which he also wrote. But it seems like a satire to me when I read it, because I can see so much of what he described back then happening now, and it's just a top book. That'll always be top of my reading pile. I've actually got a nice hardback version of it, but I brought the paperback to show you just for convenience of handling. Right, so yeah, that's it for my top 10 of novels. As I say, we'll get around to covering my book collection sooner or later. Next up, I'm hoping to do the pickups that I've had for July and August, so I hope that won't be too long in the future. So please join me then, and thanks for looking in.